Hi friends, this is Neela Prasad and welcome to SFDC Plus. So today's topic is restriction rules. So we will learn how we can enhance security with Salesforce restriction rules, and using this, how can we apply filters to determine which record will be visible to end users, right? So what is Salesforce restriction rules? So restriction rules provided added more security to your organization to limit the records that users can access, or in other words, to hide the records or to hide the data that end users can access. So with restriction rules, right, we can prevent users from accessing records that can contain sensitive data or PI data or important information that is not needed for the end users for their daily end-to-end activities. So how does this restriction rules works? So with these restriction rules, we can make certain records invisible or unavailable for those users. So after these restriction rules applied, sir, once we have created this restriction rules, right, certain records uh, falls outside of those criteria or matching criteria, so that they can access based on their sharing settings. And the more important point which need to be considered when we are talking or when we are creating restriction rules, the first point is sorry, the first point is restriction rules are available in only Lightning environment. So these restriction rules are not available in a classic environment. So before creating restriction rules, Salesforce recommending you to turn off the classic environment um, from your setup, right? I will provide the link how to turn off the classics. And why? Because Salesforce can't guarantee that restriction rules work as intended for end users who are in a classic experience. So the recommended way is turn off the Salesforce classic environment before creating this restriction. And restriction rules are not available for all the standard objects. So restriction rules available for custom objects and external objects. And when it comes to standard object, we have a contracts, we have a tasks, and we have events. And you can create up to two active restriction rules for enterprise and developer editions, and five active restriction rules per object in performance and unlimited editions. And the restriction rules are applied to Salesforce features like list views, lookups, or related lists, or reports, such and SOQL, SOS. And basically, the restriction rules works on top of these OWD and sharing mechanisms. Sharing mechanisms like we have a role hierarchy, so we have a sharing rules, and we have a manual sharing badges, right? So it will be work. It's basically filter those records which are like filter records based on the criteria which you have mentioned while creating these restriction rules. And the the important point here is basically we need to understand, like whenever you're creating the records like restriction rules, right, we need to understand this requirement, and we need to understand the purpose of this restriction rules. So let's do a quick demo on this so that we can learn more about this and we can go through a deep dive. So I have I have like basically I'll be providing those restriction links, all these help articles. So where basically Salesforce explained very clearly so that it will be understand, it will be easy to understand if you go through this uh, help articles like what is the restriction rules and what are the limitations and restriction rules and available lightning experience that we discussed. And if you see this diagram, it clearly explains. So we have a OWD, which is the default settings, and we have a sharing mechanism. So here comes the restriction rules, which is basically the filters the data based on the criteria which we have mentioned in our restriction rules. So basically, it will be there that is showing the data which matches the criteria. And these are the limitations, and these are we have some limitations for the external objects. So which is like how do restriction rules works. And if you see this diagram, right, basically it's explained clearly. So before restriction rules, we have this vulnerability, role hierarchies. It's a kind of open up in access, right? Role hierarchy and sharing rules and manual sharing. And if after this restriction rules, if you see this dark part is a kind of hidden records outside of the record criteria. and this particular part is basically a visible criteria, visible records. So this this part is basically hiding because of this restriction. And in here in the self article clearly they have mentioned uh, how to create, they have given a step by step process like how to create this restriction rules and what are the restriction rules considerations we need to take care of. And they have given the example on how to create this restriction rules kind of thing. So this is the article, I'll be adding to that links right here as well. So how to turn off this classical environment and restriction rules considerations. So what is this available object? As I told you, right, these are not available for most of the standard objects. Only contracts, event, like tasks and events only available, and it will be available for custom objects as well, and external objects. And is applicable features right, applied to these following features as we discussed earlier. And creation, they have a creation of restriction rules and how to like as we discussed we can create two restrictions, all these stuff they have explained clearly. And this, so let's test in a simple scenario where basically I have a contact object, right, which is the standard object. For the standard object I have created a object called car, where basically I have in this car object which is a child object for the contact. So it is basically this for this contact object, this car object is a child object. So basically, if you go to sharing settings, right, this particular control by parent, this account, and let me show you the custom object which we are discussing about. So because we have a master data relationship, the access is basically controlled by parent, means it is controlled by contact. Okay, so for this this is the contact object. I have created a four car records. So if you see, there are four car records. I have some field like available for rent, bill tier, per day rent kind of. So now I let me go to this car. If you see this contact object, uh, if you see here, right, there is no restriction rules tab, okay, because restriction rules are not supported for contact tab. So as we discussed previously, that is available for only custom objects and external objects. And we have for in the standard object we have contracts and tasks and events. So that is why it is not visible for the contact object. Let's get into go into the car object. And if here, right, if you go to this object manager of the car object, we have this field level, field and relationship. And if you see, there is a restriction rules tab. So if you click on the restriction rules, so I have already created a restriction rule. So basically, how to create this? You need to click the create, and you need to create. You need to give this rule name. The like as I have created this previously. Let me explain this. So I have given the rule name. So I made it as active. So in the user criteria, what I have mentioned is user department equal to admin, right? So if you see this is the user criteria. In this user criteria, it is basically we are filtering the users for whom the rule applies to, right? And we have a record criteria where basically which records we need to map this criteria, right? So what I have mentioned is car available for rent equals to it's a checkbox. So it is true. So I made it as active. So because it's an active. So which means it is applying to users whose department is admin as well as the records where available for rent field is active or means like true. So if you see this, now I came to here. I came here on a contact object, and I went to that. I went into that relationships and related list, and I have four things here. If you see, in this four, three are active and one is inactive, right? Okay, so now what I have done is I have logged into the another user where basically, if you see, let me open his record. So if you see, the department is admin. So I'm just trying to show our scenario where basically our restriction rules, as per our restriction rules, the user criteria is admin, right? Department. So That is why I logged in as this user because this user department is admin. So now, if you see, let me go to the contact section. I'm on contact now. Contact. If you see, uh, yeah. So now in the contact, I want Neela Prasad. So I have opened this contact and I went into this cars related. If you see, I can see only three. If you see, as a system admin, I can see four records. As per the user, because this restriction rules apply to this user because this user matches the user criteria and this records also matches the records criteria. So if you see, why? Because for this extra record, which is a fourth record, this available for rent is a false. But what we have mentioned in a rule in the record criteria section is it will show only when available for rent is true. That is why this particular record is not able, you are not able to see the fourth record. And let me just for a testing purpose, let me create another record, car 5. I'm just creating, just saving it. Okay. Now, if you see, if I refresh here, so I am able to see five records. And let me go to the user and now let me refresh here. If you see, fifth record is I'm able to see the fifth record as a user because this even this record also active only. Let me quickly go to this particular fifth record. Quickly disable this available for rent because that is the field where, as per the restriction rule, it will filter the data, right? So let me refresh as a user. Yes, see now only available for rent which is true, then only this particular user can see those records. And just for testing purpose, so what I'll do is I'll get this record ID for car 5. As per this, right, we should not be able to see this record, right? Let me see. Can I access this record from UA directly? Yeah. So it means this particular for this record, this particular user doesn't have access to this record. So this is how restriction rules works in Salesforce. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.